Kelly Sadler, and this is the Washington Times Politically Unstable. Today, I am joined by Chris Salcedo, host of the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax from 5 to 6 at night. And he's also the author of a brand new book, which will be published on December 9th. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon. It's The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. What prompted you to write this book?
Well, it's really a combination of things. We saw something that we have been, in my show, has been working toward for over a decade now, trying to basically introduce the country to this idea that things were changing at a really fundamental level in the Latino community. And with the election of President Trump, we finally saw that build accomplished. So I said, well, I've got to put this down on paper. And so what we decided to do was to cram 10 years of the radio show, which, yes, we have a radio show, got a podcast, got the television show. You can look it all up at chrissalcedo.com. Cram that all into a book that can be digestible about the greatest political revolution to hit the United States since the formation of the Republican Party. And then how we were going to do that? Well, we decided to use the interview that I had with President Trump just before the election as the launching point, as the orbit, if you will, to introduce all these concepts I've been talking about for a long time.
Chris, what's interesting to me is back in the day, I think it was after Mitt Romney lost to Barack Obama, there was an autopsy done by the RNC in terms of how to expand our voter base. How do we beat Democrats moving forward? Who do we need to have outreach toward? And Hispanics were the number one target. And then in 2016, you have Donald Trump enter the picture. Donald Trump takes, that escalator down a Trump Tower, and he says that we are going to put an end to illegal immigration. We are going to build a border wall. We are going to make our nation safe and secure. We are going to be a country of law and order. And there's a lot of bad people entering our country illegally. They're not sending us the best and the brightest. And at that time, he was lambasted by the mainstream media, by the Republican Party itself, many within the Republican Party itself, saying this is not the message for Latinos. This is the exact opposite of what our autopsy said was true to attract this voting base. So what about Donald Trump's message resonated within the Latino community? Why was conventional wisdom at that time proven wrong?
Because it wasn't conventional wisdom. It wasn't even wisdom. It wasn't wise. Look, Kelly, I'm going to say something that, and by the way, we detail in the book, it might come off as controversial, but the Republican and Democrat Party have colluded together for the better part of the last half century, maybe a little longer, against the will of the majority of the American people on illegal immigration. Think about this. The last 4 years, we saw unprecedented illegal immigration into this country. The Republican Party talked a lot about it, right? With Beijing Biden in the Oval Office. Not one policy was passed or insisted upon by the Republican Party to stop one illegal alien from coming into this country. Not one under Joe Biden. This has been the case for many, many, many moons. What the left-wing press was sold a bill of goods by both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, saying, you know what? If you oppose illegal immigration, you're really opposing Latinos. You're really opposing Hispanics. And Hispanics said, wait a minute, come again? you seem to think that we in the Latino community support illegal immigration. We support breaking into the United States of America. This is why so many of our progenitors, the first generation Latinos, came here, a lot of them legally, some of them illegally, but it's why they came here, for the stability of the rule of law. We know where all of this goes, where the lawlessness goes. So what Donald Trump knew and understood, because he actually talked to those in the so-called minority communities, he knew that just because you're a Latino doesn't mean you support lawlessness. Now, if you're a Democrat, you do. If you're a complicit Republican, you do, right? You support illegal immigration. But if you're a Latino, you don't necessarily support illegal immigration. He knew it. And plus, let's give credit where credit is due. Joe Biden, or the third term of Barack Obama, laid to waste, and we talk about this in the book, laid to the waste whole communities inside of areas of Texas that were just inundated with narco terrorists and massive waves of humanity with their open borders and their illegal immigration policies. And the Democrats didn't care. And by extension, the Republicans didn't do anything to stop them. So the Republicans are seen as not caring. The only one who cared to save those Latino communities was President Trump. And he, if you see the map, Kelly, it's flipped almost all red along that border. No thanks to the mainstream Republican Party. All thanks to the America First coalition and President Trump.
So, I mean, the Democratic strategy with Latinos did work for them for a while. First generation moves into this country. They vote Democratic. And I think the Democrats thought, we will give them, free healthcare, free education. We'll get them hooked on the welfare state. And then they will forever be Democrat voters. That's why they were for open borders, because the more people that flood into this country, the more people will vote Democratic, and we will have a ruling majority in forever, basically. Why did, and it's not compassionate. If you remember back to President Trump's first term, it's not compassionate to detain people on the southern border, to put them in cages. We need to abolish ICE. There needs to be less law enforcement. During Joe Biden's just last 4 years, you remember the horse whipping incident at the southern border, and how ICE agents and Border Patrol treated these illegals were not with compassion, was not with an open heart. Why do you think this backfired on the Democratic Party?
Don't forget, Jasmine Crockett just said when she sees an ICE agent, she sees a slave patrol, right? Yeah. Of course, no Latino or Hispanic can relate to what she said, because they're like, well, what are you talking about? Look, I think what was going on, because Republicans never talked to Latinos and Democrats told Latinos what to do, right? So Republicans never bothered to show up and talk to them. The Democrats just told them what to do. And that got old after a while. You know that one of the biggest groups decrying massive uncontrolled illegal immigration in this country, blacks, both parties, Republican and Democrat. Because why? Because they actually said, oh, wait a minute, this is actually encroaching on resources that should be going to Americans, the black community in this particular instance. And I think what happened with the massive illegal immigration push that was undertaken by the Democrats, historic. You saw the levels. I mean, we're talking about millions of unvetted illegal aliens from 168 countries. Not all of those are Latino countries. And there's also this dynamic inside the Hispanic community. And this is, again, because the Democrats needed a voting bloc. That's why they lump, and we talk about this in the book, they lump disparate groups together that have really nothing in common because they need a political agenda, right? So Cubanos are different than Mexicans, are different than the Northern Triangle countries, down south of the border. The cultures are different. The people who come from those countries are different. So basically what this putting everybody in boxes didn't work out so well for the left wing, because everybody started saying, wait a minute, that doesn't address any of my needs. That doesn't address any of my concerns with what government's doing. And the people got it. President Trump doesn't deal with groups. He deals with individuals. He says, the American dream is for everybody. I don't care whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic. The American dream is for everybody. And nobody else was saying that. Not even the Republican Party was saying that. Why? Because, well, the Republican Party was giving a nod to big business by importing a whole bunch of cheap labor. And the Democrats wanted a new voting force because anybody else who knew what a Democrat wasn't voting for him anymore. Because who wants to vote for a Marxist and a socialist?
You know what, Chris? What other factors going into the 2024 election tipped Latinos toward Trump? We know that illegal immigration was one of them. I mean, that was probably the number one or number two reason why President Trump one reelection amongst all demographics, that and the economy. But there's also, and tell me if I'm wrong, Latino culture is very faith-based. It's very Judeo-Christian in its roots. And transgenderism has, it's taken a hold in American culture and society. And quite frankly, to even middle of the road Democrats are thinking it's not fair for my girl to play against a biological man in sports. How did we get so far off track? Kamala Harris was said one of the most effective ads used in 2024 against Kamala Harris was targeting, we're not using they or them pronouns. We use he or her. Kind of what other issues were at play within the Latino community other than putting an end to illegal immigration?
Well, crime was definitely one. And what you were just talking about was the culture. You're absolutely right. A lot of Hispanics, Latinos, have a religious background. And they didn't like being told by Democrats. And by the way, you said it was part of our culture. It's not part of our culture. The vast majority of the American culture rejects this whole idea of the trans fallacy. We go into it in detail in the book about there's actually a gender dysphoria. There's actually a clinical diagnosis. It impacts roughly, I think the last time we did the math on this, around 48,000 people in America, out of 340 million, 48,000 people diagnosed with gender dysphoria. This trans idiocy is a creation of the left. This, people that want to dress up as the opposite sex, who think they're the opposite sex. It is not a clinical diagnosis. So the Latino community saw this nonsense and they were told, oh, if you want to be a part of the Democrat coalition, you've got to affirm mental illness. And the Latino community said, no, we don't. You have to surrender to our reality, which isn't reality. If we tell you the sky is red, you got to say the sky is red. And Latinos said, no, it's not red. So, and also you've got to reject what your faith tells you. And that was a big no-no. No, men cannot become women, genetically speaking. Women cannot become men. Men cannot have babies. And the Hispanic community, Latino community knew that. They understood that. And they were not going to betray science. They were not going to betray God and their biblical devotion for the likes of these Democrats. So that was one that got a lot of Latinos off the Democrat socialist plantation. And then there was the crime issue. And I don't know how many times, well, heck, you and I talked about this on my program. Karine Jean-Luc Picard, the press secretary, got up there and gaslit the entire country saying, no, everything's fine. And the Latino community said, no, everything's not fine. No. We're Democrats. We're telling you everything is fine. And we would say, no, everything is not fine. We can't go to the store. You let in all these criminal illegal aliens. You let out all of these people onto the streets to terrorize our neighborhoods. No, everything is not fine. And the more the Democrats said, just shut up and everything is fine, the angrier and angrier Hispanics got. So if I was going to nail down two, and we cover both of these in the book, two of those issues, those were it, other than illegal immigration.
So President Trump has recently made crime a centerpiece of his White House. He nationalized the federal guard in Washington, D.C., and we saw our crime rates here plummet. You can tell the difference when you're walking on the street. You feel so much safer. Now he's vowed to go into other cities. They've initiated a joint venture with the city of Memphis, which has a Democratic mayor, but also has acknowledged we have a real crime problem in this city. But you see Democrats in sanctuary cities nationwide reject the White House's outreach on this issue, most notably in Boston and Chicago. How is this playing within the Latino community? Do they support the president's efforts in this regard, or do they view him as a bully to these Democrats? Because a lot of the legacy media is portraying it that way.
You know, I don't pretend to speak for the entire Latino community, and this push predates or postdates the book. So the book was written before all this stuff started happening. That being said, I think that the aforementioned crime was very much a concern for Hispanics across the country. And if you look at the polling after President Trump had started instituting the law and order directives, whether it be at the border or whether it be in cities, Kelly, it was, I think, 47%, if memory serves, is the research we did. 47% of Latinos across the country supported President Trump in the last election. A majority of Hispanic males voted for him. That number has only gone up to 49% in recent polling because of the actions being taken in the first months of the new administration. So anecdotally, I can say that whatever President Trump is doing, the people in the Latino community are seeing it pay dividends, and the results, whether it be in the nation's capital, whether it's coming in Memphis, whether it's coming in Chicago, the results, the people like what they're seeing in the Latino community.
And lastly, Chris, you live in Texas. Texas is a border state. We saw so many millions cross through Texas during Biden's 4 years in office. Kind of what are you seeing? How are you firsthand seeing the results of Kristi Noem, of Tom Homan, the border czar? We see the numbers that DHS puts out. I think last month, again, there were zero crossings, which is just phenomenal. But like, how are you seeing that play out in your community?
Well, I am in the northern part of Texas. So the first communities to get impacted naturally were Southern Texans. And because the flow has been stopped down at the southern border, you can see some of the crime stats going down in a lot of the smaller communities around Texas. Even in places like Dallas, where they have a Democrat in charge of the constabulary there and a Democrat city council, they do have a converted Republican for mayor. You're starting to see a downward pressure on those crime stats. Again, this stuff is just a few months old. And don't forget, the deportations are not happening as quickly as some guy like me might want them to see. So the millions who broke into this country are still here, by and large. A lot of them unvetted. A lot of them are still doing their damage. But the bleeding has been staunched at the border, and it's giving our constabulary time. So maybe this time next year, you and I have a conversation. We see, as we start playing catch up, as the deportations start catching on, as these criminal illegal aliens start self-deporting, then I think we're going to start seeing a renaissance across not only the states of Texas like mine, but in the People's Republic of California and other heavily, shall we say, inundated with illegal alien states. All right.
Well, Chris Salcedo, thank you so much for joining me today, and for our readers and watchers. His new book, The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution, is available to pre-order right now on Amazon, and will officially be released on December 9th. Chris, Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. And by the way, on the pre-orders, it saves you a couple bucks, so why not?
Why not? Thank you so much, Chris.
See you.